Human judgment is always going to be required for the output that comes from AI.
Even myself working as an international leader, it's clear that AI makes leadership more human.
As a leader, because there's a lot of uncertainty, you need to show a lot of empathy.
Hello, I'm Jesper Schleimann. I'm the AI officer for SAP in the EMEA region. And this is AI Voices. Before we really get into the subject matter and deep dive on things, I think we really need to stand firmly on our starting point. AI has been talked about for many years, but it's not really until, I would say, the past 3.5 years, and especially so the past 12 months, that it's really accelerated and made it into mainstream business discussions. So we'd love to explore the biggest changes you've seen in your business from that perspective and in your field, and the business environment more widely since the start.
Depending on where you start from, you would have a broad spectrum of who knows how to use AI and those who are really well advanced in the use of AI, right? And for me, the biggest changes have been the way our organization has decided to tackle this. In fact, part of our LEAP 2030 strategy is really growing, doubling the size of the business. And we have step change initiatives that are really focused on AI, amplifying the business with AI. And for us, that is very, very important because it's not just adopting AI, but it's really empowering the employees to be able to use AI to really bring the value to the customers that we have. So for me, that's the biggest change because that has really set us on the path of multiple different initiatives to enable us as an organization to be more efficient, have a bigger competitive advantage, and also be innovative because it's also part of our DNA to be very innovative to our customers and continue to deliver value while we grow.
And you mentioned the different starting points in your organization. You may want to grab onto that. How have you been tackling that differences in AI literacy?
Like I said, when we launched our LEAP 2030 strategy, there was a GMM meeting that we had where we had...
a leadership meeting?
Yeah. So we had this speaker who came from HP, and he said something that really resonated with us. Everybody needs a minor in AI, right? What does that really mean? It depends on the company that or the person you're talking to, what a minor in AI is. But what we decided to do is really say, as Danfoss as an organization, we need to have a baseline of that AI literacy in the organization. And again, that was the springboard for launching our Danfoss-wide AI literacy program, which we launched to all employees. We also have segments who already started to accelerate this very quickly, and have had several different programs open to everyone in Danfoss as well. So we have multiple layers, depending on your level of expertise in AI, where you can just, tag on to one of these courses and, increase your skills in AI.
I love that. I think it was Kierkegaard who said, if you want to help someone, you have to meet the individual where they truly are, right?
Yeah.
So, and everyone needs a minor in AI. Did I get it correct?
Yes.
A great quote. Definitely going to steal that one. And if we focus in a little bit on where you were in the HR department, what was the conversation around when you began really accelerating on this journey?
Where we started from was really, we weren't really thinking about AI when we talk about work. It was just, AI is something that is happening. It's changing the world. Everyone was aware. We've had also consulting companies giving us, what AI can do for us and what it cannot do for us, for example. But for us, we didn't have a clear strategy on how to start, especially in HR, right? So that was one of the biggest things we needed to fix. Where do we start from to adopt this? We do know that we have business challenges that we needed to address. But the problem was, how do we want to tackle those? How do we want to introduce AI without adding to the existing complexities we have, right? Because when you introduce something new, you expect some form of complexity or resistance. And this was the biggest question we needed to answer before we then started on our journey with really adopting AI.
And I think the great promise of IT have always been that it should really simplify our life, right? And to a large extent, I think many of us have not really experienced that, right?
You know, the funny thing is when I always talk to my colleagues or even, stakeholders internally, I keep telling them it's not easy to make something simple, right? We always want to simplify our processes. We want to streamline and standardize, but it takes effort to do that. And we have to be willing to put in that effort to be able to achieve that simplicity that everyone is really striving for. So
I agree. It's really simplicity beyond complexity, right?
Yes.
You got to manage the complex parts and find out what's important. And also, to my extent, especially when we talk it from a technological perspective, recognize that we're just at the beginning of the journey. Mm-hmm. And we're typically confusing great capability with scalability.
Yes.
Which means that we see a lot of great things. We think it will scale naturally, but you really still have to architect for the longer view.
Yes.
To get those simple scalability benefits along the road as you move on your adoption journey.
Yeah.
And speaking of adoption journey, maybe it's something we could also talk a little bit about the adoption roadmap, because you talked about the strategy, we talked a little bit about the literacy. What's been your plans in those areas? How have you kind of evolved that?
Before we even embarked on the journey, we had to establish guiding principles for us to really adopt AI. We decided to be very intentional about it, right? Instead of just, jumping on the trend, we really wanted to make the most sense and ground ourselves. So we had 4 main principles that we established, and they helped us to, decide what would make sense for us. So we wanted to really go native AI instead of just we built something from scratch because it's fun to do it, right? Everybody likes to build something and they're proud of themselves. But we decided to be more intentional with the fact that, okay, again, if we want to reduce complexity, we start with what's easy to manage. And when we go native, it's easier to manage those. It's easier to scale them as well when we prove the value. And that was the second guiding principle, to pilot those kinds of tools first before we then scale. Because then when we're able to prove the value, we can scale it out to the entire organization. And then also we thought about governance. It's a big thing, especially for a European-based company. Things like GDPR, EU AI Act, Local Works Council regulations, all these things need to be considered before we then start to scale out these kinds of tools. And then lastly, really focusing on the people. They are the center of what we're delivering to the organization. At the end of the day, as an HR function, we're enabling our colleagues who are then going out to deliver innovative solutions to our customers. So putting those employees at the heart of whatever technology we're rolling out is very important. Can they really understand the value proposition of what we're rolling out? How easy is it for them to really adopt this? These are the kinds of questions we ask ourselves. And when this framework is in place and all these things have been answered, then we're more confident to really roll out and scale our solutions.
And I like that thinking, right? You're kind of preparing for the landing strip before you're rolling it out. Of course, starting with why are we doing it? Is it clear for everyone why we're doing what we're doing? But also recognizing that the true value only comes with adoption at scale.
Yes.
So making sure that those elements are in place to successfully scale it before you really get into it, which makes a lot of sense to me, as people also, as we talked about, are recognizing that this is a longer-term journey. Maybe to switch gears a little bit and bring our conversation to another place, maybe focusing a little bit more on the future and bring our imagination in place, which is definitely something I think you really have to do working with AI, right? I think from our own part, when we're developing things, we're increasingly developing at the edge or even beyond the edge of what's possible, because that's really the way you have to think about things these days. Otherwise, you're really going behind. In the same way, there was a period around the internet revolution where our ability to truly understand and picture what was about to happen, like what are the potential capabilities of online services, was really lagging quite far behind the true potential. Our imaginations were kind of outpaced by technology. And I think I see some of the same parallels a little bit today. And very few could have predicted where we are today. So given that imagination gap, what are your kind of AI big bets? What is it that you're seeing as you move forward for another I don't know, 3 to 5 years?
I wouldn't say what I'm going to say now is a big bet, but it's really a trend. I see that basic AI knowledge will become mainstream, will become a default requirement for entry-level jobs. It's just like you have today, where for almost every job posting, you should have basic skills in using Microsoft Excel, using PowerPoint, and these basic tools that organizations use for productivity. It's the same thing with AI. This is how I see it. It becomes something, and it's already happening everywhere we go. You use AI, I use AI, tons of my colleagues use AI as well. And this, I think, is going to become a basic, maybe even you would say you don't even need to put it in a job description, right? You just expect it to have it. Yeah, exactly. So it's like an assumed skill that you should have in the next 5 to 10 years. Another thing is I believe people will be very comfortable with having the likes of digital assistants and agents working, side by side with them. Because at the end of the day, we have seen more recently that agents can do a lot of work, but the human judgment is very, very important, right? So human judgment is always going to be required for the output that comes from AI. And with this, I know that there's been a lot of polarizing opinions about AI, right, in the industry. But this is something that, at the end of the day, when the dust settles, this is something that we will have to work with, just like we have come to accept the internet, right? We will come to accept these.
It's inevitable. Inevitable for business.
It's an inevitable change that will happen in all industries. And the best thing to happen is just follow the trends and keep ourselves upskilled with AI as we go forward.
I think, especially even myself working as an international leader, it's clear that AI makes leadership more human. Right? You really.
That's right.
The good leaders are the ones, of course, understand systems thinking in many ways, but will also increasingly handle a lot of the work, operational work. So that means it will leave for us a lot of the leadership dilemmas, operational dilemmas, that requires very human critical judgment. Right? So that's clear. But as we also see more and more of these agents enter into our workforce, we also, of course, see a more human AI hybrid organization.
Yes.
That changes, of course, both the role of leaders, and we'll come back to that, but also how does it change the strategic positioning of HR in your view?
Very, very good question. So I think for us in HR, we cannot sit on the sidelines, right? If we don't do something, someone is going to do it for us, right? Because the technology is not going to go away. It's how we then use that to transform the way we work that really matters. And the work starts now. We don't have to wait for everything to be perfect. We need to learn, get our hands dirty, learn from that, and see how we can use that to transform the workforce. Because at the end of the day, we're going to transition from being a function that is reporting on headcount to really a function that is predicting what skills are required in the next 3 to 4 years or in the short term. Predicting what's going to happen with the workforce, size of the workforce, additional skills, or even market trends, and not something that we're going to be pulling out of data, which maybe could be obsolete considering the fast pace of things these days, but more being predictive. So we move away from reactive HR to more predictive HR.
Yeah.
And that really transforms the way HR is seen as a business enabler rather than a support function.
I really like that vision, right? From a reactive supporting function to a proactive function, right? And I think for me, as we move into this hybrid human AI organization, it is crystal clear that learning and change management, which I believe are core functions of HR, becomes a crucial competitive parameter for organizations as a whole, right?
Yes.
And this is just the new part of how you have to operate, how the fabric of organizations will look. And I think it's very interesting to think about the role of HR there, right?
Yeah, I think organizations that can learn even faster than the changing environment itself would be the organizations that have the competitive advantage.
Yes, quite literally it would mean scaling and especially adopting AI technologies faster and hereby reaping the benefits, whether it's quality, time, or efficiency. Right?
Yes.
So, and I think this is, besides silo data, the biggest challenge really for reaping and also the benefits of AI also largely responsible why we haven't moved further along the road yet. But once we get there, once you get comfortable with it, once you have the trust, and you learn how to embed it in your organizational structure.
And just one comment on the trust thing, right? Trust in AI cannot be achieved from the distance, right? You need to go closer. You need to see what it's doing for you to be able to trust or not even trust the tool itself. And what I've seen so far is, yes, we're intentional, and being intentional is not being skeptical. It is really looking at what exactly does it mean for us as an organization? What is the benefit at the end of the day? So for us, that's why that approach we took is very important and is really core to every decision that we make.
We talk quite a lot about AI's impact on the wider organization, the role of HR. But I want to zoom in on the changing role of the leader, right? Managing this hybrid organization, this change, this move where we are increasingly not only getting to be in the loop with AI, but also more on the loop and with other also sapient colleagues, as I call it. How do you see leaders adapting to this new world? What is needed of them?
I ask myself this question also every day, and I like the use of the word autosapiens actually. But as a leader, I think you need to be also bold, because everybody's asking the same questions. Even leaders are asking themselves or asking questions to other leaders. What does this mean for my job? What does this mean for me as a leader? And the only way to find out is really to dive in. Like I said earlier, right? We will find the answers where we start to see how AI is really bringing changes to the way the organization is set up. And when I say changes, it's not really, it's taking someone's job or things like this, but taking away those busy work is what I call it, right? That's where we need to start from. We as managers, we see this every day. We see our team members frustrated by, some tasks that they're doing that, maybe could have been a lot better just moving it to some robot to fix it or someone else. They don't want to do these tasks. And those tasks, you look at them and then you start to see, how can I make the lives of my employees better, right? So that's one thing as a leader. You really need to be very people-centric. Empathy is also something very important because as a leader, because there's a lot of uncertainty, right? You need to show a lot of empathy to employees. When you have people that are uncertain about things like, the AI transformation or AI revolution, we just need to be there with them, right? And we don't need to dismiss it, because I've seen leaders really just, dismiss this and say, no, it's fine, it's not going to take your job, or it's transformative, But the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? And also, as a leader, we need to be very comfortable with uncertain times, because this is technology that is rapidly evolving. Today, you hear something on the news. Tomorrow, it's the complete opposite, right? So it's a fundamental skill for leaders would be comfortable with uncertainties, constantly changing market conditions, being able to really digest things very quickly when they change, because that is the strength that leaders would need to show their employees as well, to still inspire confidence.
I think you're right. I think also we also need to be role models as leaders, right? So when we work with AI, also show what we are doing, how we're failing, how we are living with it.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, we used to have this leader, and he was always talking about the difference between playing office, going to the office and playing office, moving around pieces of paper and actually wearing the jacket. And I think AI will also really expose where you're just doing the admin work, because that will increasingly be done by AI agents, setting up meetings, setting up governance structures, following up on those elements. Yeah. And that will ideally free up a lot more time for you to make the hard human decisions. So on the other hand, as we talked about, there will be a lot of challenges, at least in the mid to short term, in managing that change, because it's going to be a lot of change. I think people are still underestimating the change on this area. Are there any lessons or examples that you've seen from your organization on that change journey?
I think for us, when we started the journey, again, we are nowhere near transformational. We're still at the beginning of our journey, right? But what I've seen so far is, despite the fear and uncertainty, our colleagues are very curious and open, because once again, they see that, this actually saves me a lot of time with this annoying work that I do, or annoying task rather, because work is really multiple tasks. But this annoying task that is so mundane, it can just take it off my table, or it makes the experience of work a lot better. Then they're more open to it. And this was feedback that we also got from an extensive research that we did last year with students. We collaborated with the Copenhagen Business School, and that was an extensive research because we had already started to use AI for a few months, and we were very curious to know how are our people reacting to the AI tools we've rolled out to them, right? And again, concrete feedback. Of course, that's positive. There were also some negatives. So you would expect, you don't expect that everything is going to be positive. And that also encouraged us to continue on this journey, because it shows that the strategy works. Being intentional, listening to feedback from employees and managers, because they're the ones we want to empower with AI. We're solving their problems. And that way, adoption is going up. Yeah. It's still new, and it's not like I'm saying that we have like massive adoption of the AI technology, but it's way beyond our expectation. Right? That's good. Which is good.
Yeah. And before we wrap it up, any gold nuggets or last pieces of advice for our listeners?
Again, be bold. We shouldn't be scared of AI. I think the fear is the fear of the unknown. If you don't interact with the tool, you cannot know what it can do for you, right? But also, when we're using AI, we should be also very cautious about data, right? It's a very powerful tool, and we should always have that at the back of our minds. When using AI, use it responsibly, right? And just be open-minded and enjoy it, because you will also, I'm having a lot of fun with the tools. Yeah. And I think if you're open-minded, you would be surprised what you discover with the use of AI.
Be bold, be mindful of your data, and yet, be open-minded. Yes. I think those are great pieces of advice for our listeners as they embark on their AI journey. So thank you, Muizz, for sharing your experiences, cases, and insights with us here today on AI Voices.
Thank you for having me.
As we accelerate on the AI journey and managing the growing pace of change, our voices are increasingly an important part in ensuring the successful adoption, scaling, efficiency, and efficacy of AI. My name is Jesper Schleimann, and it's been my pleasure to host you today. AI Voices will return on YouTube, LinkedIn, and SAP.com, as well as other social media. Thank you for listening.